Hi, my name is Joanna Whitney. I am an intuitive artist, a student of natural law, and an energy healer. And we're talking about the Kybalion right now, and we're on page 19, and we're going through the sort of short synopsis of each of the principles. And the reason I give you my backstory is because the fact that I'm an intuitive artist means that I've been seeking a spiritual experience for many years, and I do receive information through my artwork and from my subconscious and from the ether, and I use it to make art as the source point of art. I don't start with the conscious mind idea. When I make art, I use the vast resources of the collective unconscious or the subconscious or the God mind to inform my work. And that's led me to seek esoteric teachings, which I have been doing for many years. And I have been involved in a mystery school for over 30 years, which has its roots in the law of cause and effect, the application of the law of cause and effect, as well as other principles. And let's see, the fact that I'm a student of natural law means that I try to live according to morality and rule the inner monarchy so that I can be free and I don't have to be subject to external rule. And that's based on the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And also that I'm an energy healer, which means that I understand that all is energy and that it just takes a reframing of my perception of matter, energy, and causality to be able to transform energy and trauma and dis-ease into healing. So this has been my life's work, and just revisiting the Kybalion at this time is because I have unsuccessfully I was not successful in being able to organize a group of people to work together to create community, which I felt at that time was the solution to the globalist agenda, would be to create a simultaneous economy that was outside of our economy, our society. I was not successful at doing that. And mainly that seemed to me because so many people don't rule their own inner monarchy. So after much blood, sweat, and tears trying to get that done, I just decided to explore my own powers and also to help other people to explore their own powers, to do this individually, to seek arcane knowledge, esoteric knowledge to perfect our own individual skills, regaining our own control over our own minds and being able to use our own minds in various ways to find freedom in this world now, as we are on the brink of something in the spiritual war that we're in. So that's why I'm studying the Kybalion. And like I said, we're on page 19. I'm just going to read and comment. So it's the fifth principle is the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kybalion. So, basically what this shows is that the Kybalion is not this book. The Kybalion is a much larger text, or it's an oral teaching that we don't know what it is right now. I know a few Hermetic texts that I've been delving into recently. The Corpus Hermeticum, the Divine Pymander, the Emerald Tablets, and a recent one I'm reading is called Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon, I believe. Or maybe it's Bardon. I don't know. I'll put it in the description. But they all do talk about these principles. This book is like a little tray of hors d'oeuvres. If you're interested in these principles and you want to go further with them, there's many other books that are available, and they're all available free online. You can get them through annasarchive.org, which mirrors libgen.org and Z-Library and the Gutenberg Project. So Anna's Archive, you can get everything through that new book repository. Anyway, so this principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and a low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago, but it was actually last week that we read that chapter. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. So let's look at that for a minute, okay? It's basically saying, you just think about the Earth like every month, the moon, there's a new moon, and then for a few days, and then it goes into its various stages. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 8 or 9 stages of each moon through the month. Goes from the new moon to the full moon, and then it starts waning back down to another new moon. The seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, but each of them has 3 months in them, and each of them has an astrological sign that governs them, planetary body influence on them. Then, with every thing that's alive, it has its birth, it has its childhood, then it has its adulthood or teenagehood, then it has its adulthood, then it has its elder stage, and then death. These are all rhythmic flows of everything that is on Earth, including projects. All projects have a beginning, a middle, and an end. When it goes along with the Earth, there is a way to suspend that process, but it requires that people, let's say people, I'm just going to, well, there's just a few different things. Like, let's say, for example, take these trees that are like 5,000 years old in Turkey. I don't know if they're still alive now because of chemtrails, but there was these trees in Turkey that were 5,000 years old. And I believe, maybe I'm making that up, but maybe I'm making up the place that they were. But anyway, in order for them to stay alive for 5,000 years, they had to create their own ecosystem. And that's what we would have to do if we were going to keep something alive. Like these teachings were kept alive through oral transmission, and they were kept secret, occulted from the masses. And they're, you know, maybe 400,000 years old. I don't know. They might be, I'm not really sure how old they are, but ancient Egypt. And so if something is going to be suspended above that natural ebb and flow, it has to have its own ecosystem or have its own way that it's kept alive, either by not being spread about to everyone, being kept secret, being passed orally, not written down, or it has to create its own ecosystem. Or for example, the school that I'm in, we have our own principles based on these principles, but we have to use these principles in order to keep our teachings pure and not have them be infiltrated by other things from society. The Amish, take the Amish, for example. The reason the Amish have been able to maintain their autonomy within the entire span of the beginning of the United States is because they have their own way of living outside of the mass society. And that's how come they still have been able to maintain their autonomy within society. So when they say, you know, nations go through this process, there's a rise and fall of a nation. We're seeing that right now, right? But those of us who want to survive that, we have to figure out a way to rise above what's going on in society so that we don't have to be subject to the rise and fall of this society, for example, this nation or whatever. Okay, it says, this law is manifested in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally, in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter, and it is with this latter that the Hermetists find the understanding of the principle most important. So in other words, the Hermetists think it's the most important to figure out a way to find a way to live with the law of rhythm in the mental states of man. That's the most important thing, because that's what lends itself to the rise and fall of nations. If humans' minds are being tossed about by an outside influence, then that will bring on the rise and fall of nations. The Hermetists have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by the use of the appropriate formulas and methods, which we'll probably go into later. They apply the mental law of neutralization. I was actually talking about this last time during the law of polarity, the how to go into neutrality. They apply the mental law of neutralization. They cannot annul the principle of rhythm or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape its effects upon themselves to a certain degree, depending upon the mastery of the principle. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. In this and similar methods consists the art of the hermetist. The master of hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to the other pole. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk about that. So this is a form of mental alchemy where we're going to be turning lead thinking into gold thinking. And I did talk about this in the other video. It's about neither endorsing nor opposing any causes. You may have a private cause that you believe in, but if you keep it to yourself, you can rise above the ups and downs of societal pressures and remain mentally neutral. And when you're mentally neutral, you have power. Whereas if you're polarized into one side of the argument or the other side, then you have no power at all. You can be controlled by the opposition. And so that's going to be probably a big part of what this book is going to be about, is learning how to access neutrality. There was something else I wanted to say about this too. Can't remember right now. All right. All individuals who have attained any degree of mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously and by the use of his will, which is capitalized. So I would say that means his higher self and prayer. You know, I utilize prayer. I know how to go into neutrality. And I talked about this a little bit last week. It's like I use compassion to go into neutrality, because if I see the other person in me, then I can't be angry at them. And that allows me to be tolerant of them. And the word tolerance actually means, it's a scientific term, which means it's the energy in between two spinning rods. So in order to remain tolerant, I have to remain neutral. I have to remain that equilibrium medium in between the two spinning forces. I can't choose one side or the other. And that I can pray for that. I mean, you don't have to do all this yourself. A lot of people do all this themselves, but it's not required, because it is in the best interest of God if we do practice these principles, because we won't harm the planet. We won't cause harm to the planet or each other if we were neutral. And so it's in alignment with natural law to practice these principles. So I will get what I need to practice these principles. So, but I'm going to reread this. But the master does this consciously and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses, who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum. I mean, you can see this on social media right now. Like, you know, I had a problem this week with the FedEx delivery, and I posted a commentary on it on Reddit, and I couldn't believe, like, that people got into a brawl over their opposing opinions about this issue. It was amazing to me. They wanted to kill each other. It was like road rage on the internet. And you know, that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to give yourself access to rage. Like, people might think that, like, you just let it out. I don't believe that necessarily. Because the thing about it is it's energy that I could use creatively. And if I let it out, I could cause harm to other people or other animals if I let it out, in the wrong way. Maybe I need to contain it. Maybe I need to use it more thoughtfully, more intentionally than to just, duke it out with my fellows on social media. It's Neanderthal behavior, like, to do this. I mean, and this is where we're at now. We're at this point where people just are at war with each other. I mean, I saw this. I'll just give a little example. In the situation with FedEx, I saw that the drivers are at war with me, the customer, because their boss has given them too much work to do. So they hate all of us customers. We're relegated to, assholes. We're assholes. And so they're not trying to help us get our packages. They're just trying to get paid because they're overworked by their bosses. So what is going on here? The rhythm is out of sync, and and by all the other things that are going on, whatever they're paying attention to, TV shows and the news and the influence of politics on their lives, they're just being tossed about by anger, from going from one thing to make them angry to another thing to make them angry, and they're trying to place blame on whoever, invisible person is not in their lives that they can place blame on. Now, if they could instead think clearly and rise into a state of neutrality, their bosses wouldn't have control over them anymore, and they wouldn't be tossed about like this. And the customer would no longer be the enemy. You see, but that's what the global elite want. They want to create chaos. And as long as we don't behave morally, they will be able to create more and more chaos. And then we will beg them for, they hope that we will beg them for order, the new world order. Okay. This principle and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermetics, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be learning how to find neutrality. The other thing I wanted to say is, the CIA has been using Hermetic principles for many years. They've been, doing all kinds of tests on people to learn how to do remote viewing for the purpose of spying and, utilizing the astral plane for remote viewing. They've been using MK Ultra to create alters, multiple personality disorder in people so that they could get them to behave however they want or whatever. And they've been using the principle of rhythm too, like in terms of how they play us. Like they play us with bait and switch, like they want something. Bait and switch is a rhythm. They throw out the bait, we react, they pull a bait back in, and then they switch and put out a different bait, and then we bite. That's a rhythm that because they know how this works. They have great psychological masters behind their plans. And if you become knowledgeable about what they're doing, then you don't have to fall for it anymore. They also, this is the Hegelian dialectic is also as a rhythm. The Hegelian dialectic is problem, reaction, solution. That's a total rhythm. They create the problem, we react, and they create the solution. Now, if that's like the problem and the solution are polarities, and they come in as the intermediary with the to incubate the reaction. They put out the problem and they put out the solution. So it's a rhythm. If I rose into a state of neutrality and I could see that it was them creating the problem in the first place, I wouldn't have to react, and then I wouldn't have to buy their solution. And that would mean that I would have more freedom, less slavery. So yeah, this is all being used. It can be used for good or evil, you know, just like a gun. It's not the gun that's evil, it's the person who's holding it and their intentions, whether they're there to use it for self-defense or to get their food, or if they're going to use it for personal gain. See you next time.